A Coast Guard veteran who transitioned from taming pirates and confronting drug cartels to helping his community tame their minds and tackle addiction in a healthier way. Join us with Nathan Rogers, who now runs a unique inland kava bar here dedicated to providing a safe, supportive space for healthier alternatives to alcohol. Yep. Let's dive into his journey.
All right.
Awesome. Welcome, Nathan. Thanks for coming on the
Thank you for
podcast
having
today.
me. Yeah.
I got a little bit of a cold, so you can hear the congestion.
All right.
But nothing that kava cannot fix.
Right.
Yeah. So the Coast Guard, and I have the utmost respect for the Coast Guard because, I was in the Marine Corps.
Marine Corps birthday.
November 10th, 1775.
Yeah.
And I was fast company, my first unit, and my first deployment was Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
And now he's telling tales about a fence line shooting.
So we would do patrols, not to get into too much, into the OPSEC, loose lips, sink ships type of thing. And so we would do patrols and get inserted by these fast boats, the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
And those were so much fun. Best time with the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Can you go into what inspired you to join the Coast Guard? And
Yeah. I think a lot of it was I wanted to join the military for the GI Bill. I wanted education, right? So I wanted to also for it to mean something. So at the time when I joined, it was incredibly difficult to get in the Coast Guard. So I figured if I could get into the hardest one, then it would mean more, right? Like it would be worth something, an accomplishment. And so it was a bit of a road, but I did get in. And the other thing is I wanted to be a firefighter, right? So that was
don't we
one
all?
thing.
That's
right?
the number, yeah. Which
So-
is I was a reserve firefighter for a couple years.
Yeah.
And it is the funnest job
Yes.
in the world. You get to break stuff. That's awesome.
Well, and just the look on a person's face, you know what I mean, when they see you is just amazing because it's just so motivating because they are thinking they're dying. And then they see this person show up regardless
their worst
of where
day.
it's at.
Yeah. You're there on their worst day.
And you help them. Helping people in that moment was what I loved most.
Yeah. That's
for
cool.
sure. So anyway, I did get into that. It also had a fireman trade. One of the actual trades was fireman. So that's what I did. And then I ended up getting stationed in Miami on a Coast Guard cutter Chandelure. So that was a 110-foot cutter that did pretty much the Caribbean, drug running and things of that nature, search and rescue.
And there's actual drug running and borderline pirates
Yep.
in that
Pirate.
area.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the real deal. It's
Yeah, it was actually at the time classified as the second toughest station duty in the Coast Guard, to be in Miami on one of those 110-foot cutters because you were out for 45 days, maybe 2 months, but you were out. It wasn't like
mission.
You were, and it was small. There was 17 of us on 110 feet. Mostly engine, and so it was very unique.
It is. People don't realize because in the Marine Corps there's the ribbon, the sea service ribbon.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be on the ship for 30 days or something like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have really a perspective of how difficult it is to be on a ship. First, because I was on an amphib when I did the 31st MEU, and I watched Marines go crazy. Literally have to go to the chaplain and go crazy.
Calm down. Get a hold of yourself.
We were only weeks at sea.
Yeah.
And I totally get it because it is, if you're claustrophobic or because you can be in a storm and it's rolling. And an instance with me, one time we were just in this heavy storm and I'm like, I really smell diesel. I'm smelling diesel. There's diesel all around, and we're just in this, our berthing, and where they tell you to stay in your bunker. And this guy opens up our hatch with a mask on, a respirator, and says, "Hey guys, don't open this door. There's toxic gas in this next room." I said, "Why are you opening the door then?" So I get what you're saying. The level of not necessarily danger, but you're doing real world operations, and they're on par with combat operations. And can you go into some of kind of your mission on the cutter and you said like drug running and stuff like that? Were you guys on patrol?
We did a lot of we did also a lot of like training, like Belize Coast Guard. We also did a lot of like different missions that were more or less help to help small islands and things like that. So we did a lot of training to other countries for like how did we do it in the Coast Guard. And so there was some of that. You know, obviously being in Miami, there were several hurricanes and tropical storms, so we had to run from a few of those. That was really, really crazy. So
what's some of the worst storms you've been
probably
in?
The worst one, and I don't remember the name of the hurricane, but we knew it was coming, and so we were coming back from Puerto Rico, and so we turned around and started running from it because we were like in between Miami and Puerto Rico, and the hurricane was coming our way, and so we turned and we just hit it as hard as we could and started trying to run the other direction to get away from it. And the swells were probably 100 or more feet. And so we're 110-foot cutter. So you're literally going up and down and then straight up.
I'm not sick from champagne. I'm sick from the sea.
And then up and down and straight up. Like it was incredible. Of course, I was very young and kind of just didn't understand danger so well.
We didn't. I think it's true that for guys, I think it's the age of 23 or 24 that you don't have a concept of dying yet. You don't know the concept, and it's kind of ingrained in us genetically, or to where we can go do dangerous things and not know, like, oh man. But you look back at it now and you're like, oh my goodness.
Well, I thought it would be cool to sit on the aft part of the ship and hold on to stuff and then watch it all happen, right? Like I thought that would be cool. So that's where I did it. So that was pretty.
Were you in the Coast Guard pre or post Titanic movie?
Are you ready to go back to Titanic?
Actually, I was in the Coast Guard during the Titanic movie.
Did it?
Yeah, I had to see that like 12 times. I hated that dang movie.
On VHS,
Yeah, on VHS, exactly.
That's awesome. So do you mind telling a story, or it could be anything from your Coast Guard, and make it a PG-13 version.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'll have to keep it clean.
No, you don't. You don't have to.
Okay.
This is a uncensored podcast.
Right.
But I know the Coast Guard, they're borderline pirates themselves. So
well, we just have a badge, right?
Right.
We're criminals with a badge. No. So I think one of the coolest ones, and it allows me to kind of razz a little of the Navy, because there's always
there's
a huge they call us puddle jumpers and stuff like that, right?
I'm being sarcastic. I know
okay.
the rivalry between the Coast Guard and the Navy.
Come catch your greatest enemies
Is crazy.
Yeah,
it is like there's not even anything close, because the Marine Corps and the Navy, you're the men's department, or we're the men's department of the Navy, blah, blah,
right.
Stuff like that. Nothing compares between the Coast Guard and the Navy. Like on borderline, like be fear for your life.
There was a lot of odd moments. Let's just say that.
Hey, Sailor.
So we ended up, I forgot what mission we were on, but we were assigned to go to Guantanamo Bay for like 3 days, right? So in Cuba was not something that we went to very often. So it was really kind of unique and cool for us, because we got to see Cuba.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, it was actually extremely beautiful, surprisingly beautiful. And
manatees
so
just swimming around, running over them and stuff.
Yeah, and then like in Guantanamo Bay is almost like a city in itself, right? Like there was all kinds of restaurants and bars and things like that.
There's base housing.
Yep.
We went, but it's just crazy how you have that military fence line and stuff like that, but then you have like a world within itself, this little town.
Yeah, that was also surprising, is this to see how that was. You just didn't know what to expect. But so when we got in and everything like that, a bunch of us wanted to. We had heard about the paintball training facility that they had, and basically it was up a mountain and a bunch of different stuff. And so Navy SEALs trained there, all this kind of stuff. And so we're always being razzed because we're in the Coast Guard, right? And so we ended up getting a bunch of us together, and we went over there, and there was a Navy ship also that had just pulled in, and so some of their guys were there too. So it was like the Navy against the Coast Guard, and we ended up winning, the paintball little war match that we had, and so we were giving them a lot of crap. And of course we went to a bar, and then they were there, so we were giving them more crap, right? And we had the XO with us too, right? So there's the captain and then the XO. So he was an officer. Also too, he was the captain of the ship. So captains could only be captains of ships, right? Or higher, right? Like if you got to 378s, admirals and stuff like that were captains. But so the captain wasn't with us, but the XO was. So that kind of also for us younger enlisted guys, we were like, hey, the XO is with us. Like we can't get in trouble. Right. So anyway, we got pretty lit, and we made it back to the ship, and we look over, and there's the Navy ship, probably like, I don't know, 200 yards from where we're docked. Right. And so we have this idea of going over there and sneaking onto the ship and messing with them, like just not damaging anything, but just move everything around, hide things, undo all the ropes and stuff like that. Just demolish.
You
like
got me.
Yeah. And we know that they got to have somebody on watch, just like we do. So we're like, we're gonna have to sneak. So we started all stripping down to swim over there, right? We thought we'd be like the Navy SEAls and stuff, right? Yeah, Coast Guard SEAls, right? And so the XO was like, no, okay, look, we gotta at least wear these life jackets, and like
very responsible.
Yeah, very responsible in the situation.
And he probably was saying that while he was wasted, like
super wasted. But
guys?
he thought, yeah. Anyway, he's like, but if you drown, we'll at least be able to find you. And
that's
so,
true.
And so
I could see guys passing out drunk, face down in their life.
Exactly. And the full moon, so it was very beautiful. You could really see everything.
Was this you said in Gitmo?
Yeah.
Which is infested with sharks.
We're into shark-infested water, so...
And Barracuda.
And I've seen. I actually scuba dived in Cuba.
Yeah.
And there are the biggest Barracuda, the biggest, most vicious sharks.
Yep.
And so go on.
We didn't know all of that at the time.
Oh my gosh.
Even if we did, we probably wouldn't have cared. We were very set on doing this. So, but the life jackets also have reflector tape on them. So as we swam across the reflector tape in the moon, we just looked like shiny stuff, right? So the Barracuda was just eating us. But we were drunk, and their teeth are like razor sharp.
Barracuda.
Oh yeah, we were. Yeah. So
which is putting blood in the water.
Yeah,
which is
more blood in the water, right? And then we had to swim back after we messed with the ship, and we didn't get caught. And so we got back, and when we got back, we started taking off the life jackets, and like we were just like razor cuts all over us, like from head to toe. Like it was pretty obvious.
That'd be cool if because you get a scar and you have a good story. It'd be good if some of those bites scarred, because it would
have been great. Yes. But they were, for whatever reason, they weren't that bad. I don't know why, but I mean, they were visibly.
You were probably making the Barracudas drunk. They were biting you, and then they were getting intoxicated and then passing out.
Exactly.
You guys were so drunk.
Yep.
So.
Yep. That sounds about right. So, anyway, all I remember is the next morning, all of us being woke up, like, they're yelling at us, get out there, and so we get dressed and we get out there. We're like, what happened? Like, who's in trouble? So we get out there and we're all lined up, and the Navy captain is standing there with a bunch of people too.
Oh no!
And our captain is like, talking to him, and he's like, your guys came over and like, defaced our ship and da-da-da-da-da. And he was like, I don't know about that. And so he stands there and he looks up, and there's like all of us that went, we have cuts all over us, and we're all so hungover. And he's like, look at them. They're all cut up. And even the XO was like cut up, right? So the captain's like trying to like cover our backs because it included his XO as well. And so we ended up getting away with it. Our captain kind of covered for us and stuff like that. But yeah, that was a pretty crazy story. Definitely, for sure.
That's awesome. That's cool. And that's a great segue into, you go from the Coast Guard drinking enough alcohol to sink a ship, right?
Definitely.
To starting a local business here in Coeur d'Alene, where you help people that are struggling with addiction, with alcohol abuse, to find a healthier alternative.
Yeah.
Can you go into kind of what inspired you to get into the kava world, and go touch into the benefits of and kind of the misconceptions that kava does have?
Sure. So to be honest, a lot of it was pure necessity and accident. So I had a couple spinal fusions, and I was trying to heal from those. And so I had heard about kratom, and so I was like, but I'd also heard all the horror stories. And so as I started digging into the science of it, come to find out that what the FDA was claiming wasn't entirely true. And so I tried it. I thought, well, I mean, I'll try it. So as I tried it, I was able to start recovering. I was working out 3 times a week. I was able to move in ways I hadn't moved in almost a year, right? And so I was like, okay, maybe there's something to this, because I'm not a real holistic kind of guy. I never was.
Yeah,
I was
man.
like, yeah. I just walk it off, right? and so for me at that time, it kind of opened up my eyes to, like, different things. And then I had a buddy that played rugby, and he played with a bunch of Samoans, and so we were talking about.
And he, God rest his soul, because you're playing rugby with some Samoans.
I don't know how he survived it, but he must have been really fast. But
or you had him on their side.
Exactly.
Man.
So anyway, he knew about kava and had told me about kava because it has really cool properties that help relax the muscles, which also help your body like detox. So your muscle fibers release all the inflammation and things that your muscle fibers hold, and your body then takes that and flushes it out, right? And so that's kind of where it started. But as I started investigating and using it, which I did for like a year before I decided to open up a kava bar, I found that I never really drank a lot, but I'd come home and have a couple glasses of wine or something like that. But alcohol is really bad for inflammation. And with somebody with spinal fusions, inflammation is your worst, enemy, because it'll swell and push on those nerve endings, and then it really hurts. So I found that I didn't even care for the alcohol anymore. I would relax and I would feel social and I would sleep better and wake up and actually feel better the next morning rather than feeling worse, right?
Alcohol's a toxin. You're putting that toxin into your body, and it's
Toxins.
just wreaking havoc, especially if you're having injuries from the military. It's just...
Yeah. Well, you find things that work and you don't think to worry about the other side of it, right? You're just like, hey, in this moment, I'm not hurting so bad. This works. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so over time, it kind of pushed me to find something a little bit healthier. And then as I started to investigate it, that's when I found that it actually helps monitor the enzymes in your brain that actually trigger your brain to become social.
Oh, wow.
So you just feel relaxed and you feel social. You genuinely feel social. Without losing like your motor skills, without losing your inhibitions, like you know what you're doing.
With alcohol, it lowers your inhibitions in that decision making in the frontal cortex. So
So alcohol is a poison. Our liver generates an enzyme to neutralize that poison. So what we feel really isn't the alcohol, it's the enzyme. And it's our body's way of trying to get us to stop putting the poison in our body. And that's the effect. And that's also too why that as you drink more and more alcohol, it takes more and more to get you drunk, because you're depleting your liver of being able to generate that enzyme. Man. So really it's the enzyme that makes us feel drunk. And the idea is to stop our body functions and stop doing whatever it is that we're doing. And that's the idea. It's our body's way of trying to defeat that. Whereas in kava is completely different, natural. It's actually pushing and creating those enzymes and balancing the hormones and stuff like that in your mind to help you remember how to be social. So that was it was a whole thing that just kind of over a year and a half that just kind of ended up discovering and kind of just researching and figuring out what's good kava, what's bad kava, all that kind of stuff.
I did, in research see that the brewing process and a lot of that stuff has to do with it if they are doing it. And I think you might have touched on this before in a conversation of how if you don't brew it properly and stuff like that, it can lower the quality.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. So the plant itself, how it's harvested, how it's dried, and all of those different things, how old the plant is. So generally a kava is a root of a pepper bush, more or less.
Okay.
Right. And that's why some of the kava can have kind of a peppery taste to it.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't generally, it's kind of a hard plant to keep alive. So they have to intentionally keep these plants alive.
Yeah.
The higher up the mountain you go, the more natural it is. So there's different minerals and stuff in the South Pacific Islands that this bush really needs in order to grow, which is why it's so like more indigenous to that area. But the lower areas of the islands gets depleted of that mineral. So they either have to bring the soil from up above and put it in there, or they farm up the mountain, right? So the more of those minerals that are in the soil, the stronger the plant is. And the plant generally lives for about 5 years before they start to harvest it. And then they can cut off parts of the root system, cover it back up, and it'll regrow those root systems. So anything from 7 to 10 years old is just packed full of the different enzymes and things that we're looking for from kava.
That's cool. Yeah, and it's there's a lot that goes into it, but I've noticed that in the last couple years, that the culture is being more receptive to alternatives to alcohol. You see a lot of people doing dry year or abstaining from alcohol a lot more.
Yep. Sober October. There's a lot of dry bars now, a lot of mocktails. I haven't quite figured that out because I feel like $10 for a cup of juice is a little crazy.
Yeah.
But they want the social side, but without the intoxicating side.
Right. But I do think that in a culture that that pushes alcohol so much that you have to drink alcohol to have fun, you have to do this to, and if you don't, and you're in that situation, people try to make you feel weird for doing that. Do you see that in a challenge in having a kava bar? Do you see any pushback from providing a healthier alternative to alcohol?
Sure. Coeur d'Alene's not a huge metropolis either. I mean, in Florida, there's probably more kava bars than there are alcohol bars at this point, right? So up here, new things aren't always quite so susceptible. So yeah, sure, it's been called a hippie bar, it's been called this, or all these different things, right? But
definitely no hippies in your bar.
No, not really. Like it's kind of well, and I work really hard to create an environment that everybody's welcome. And I said this from the very beginning. I wanted a place that somebody who was more natural would come in and feel comfortable, and I wanted the NRA card-carrying roofer to get off the roof and be able to come in and also feel comfortable, right?
Kick his ass, Seabass!
And so to me, I just wanted a place where there were no politics, no like pushing agendas, things of that nature, where people just could come together and reconnect. And this was all during 2020 and 2021 with COVID and all of the isolation.
Right.
And so it was a huge need at that point.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome. And you do a lot of trivia nights.
We do, yeah. Karaoke. Every Friday we have a local live musician come in. We try to support the community in those ways. Saturdays and Sundays, we generally do something just to kind of create a lot of that atmosphere.
Yeah. And it's, it is such a great, I see it as such a great alternative to alcohol, but not just, doesn't have that stigma like, oh, I'm here because, I was addicted to alcohol or substances, but it's just a place to hang out, and have just, good relationships, connections with people in the community.
We have plenty of regulars that drink on occasion, but also to hang out at the kava bar because they love the people that they've met there.
Right.
So it's more about the people and the connection than it is so much about the product. Yeah, it is nice that it relaxes you, helps you sleep, that it does make you feel more social without, all the other sides.
And I don't feel it makes you feel social, but it doesn't make you feel like you're under the influence. Like
Right.
you still have the same.
It's your brain doing the work.
Right.
It really, it's just triggering
got
your brain to balance.
Just more like a relaxed feeling and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And it does help me, with inflammation and the pain that I have from past injuries from the military. But that's awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing your journey of starting the kava business and helping people in the community. And I love the story about the Barracudas, and because I know. Because I would stand on the fence line in Cuba, and there was a meat processing plant up the river on the Cuban side, the occupied communist side, and I would watch these giant sharks, man-eating sharks, swim up the river towards that meat processing plant, and there's just I don't know how you guys didn't get killed by a shark. So
don't know either.
Love it, but thank you for your service in the Coast Guard, and not trying to offend all the Navy people.
Oh, I am.
Yeah,
I don't care.
yeah. But I love it. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, and I'll see you at the Kava Bar.
Yes, sir.
All right, bye.
Bye.